Sean Meadows, Meadows Forging,
Yeah.
the most famous person on this podcast so far.
Hopefully that'll change.
You are the top 1% of people in the world when it comes to TV time.
Am I?
Yeah, it doesn't take much. But yeah.
I assume that only 1% of the population has been on TV.
Yeah, longer than 15 minutes.
Nice.
Yeah.
So wild, I'm double that, at least.
Yeah, at least. You're probably talking like 0.01%. You're very high percentile, sir.
We'll take it.
So final contester in Forged and Fire.
Yep.
Got into forging, different than blacksmithing, which we talked about the first time we met.
Yep.
And we'll dive some into that. And yeah, man. So what, I guess, got you started with forging? So
originally I had spent a lot of time on YouTube, just kind of watching a bunch of videos. I think I started with wood turning first. Shout out to Andy Phillip on YouTube. I love his content. He just makes like little 10-minute wood turning things, and they're always gorgeous. But that was super satisfying for me. I'd watch those videos to go to bed. But eventually I got to a point where I just like exhausted that catalog, and I was like, what other avenues can I get into?
So is the wood turning the thing where it's on like the little
on
billet,
the lathe, yeah,
and he just shaves away?
Yep. It's great. Because I've got that lathe in my shop, but I don't use it too much.
Okay.
But yeah, I started looking into other avenues, looking into, I started watching Blacktail Studio. If you're familiar, he's a very large woodworking YouTuber who makes giant like dining room tables and conference tables and stuff like that out of Oregon. I think it's Oregon.
Does he do the epoxy stuff?
Yes, he does quite a bit of it. He's famous for like black walnut and black epoxy.
Okay. I think I saw one of his Star Wars one. Where he had little TIE fighters.
Oh, I don't think he normally puts things in there. He normally just does black.
This might have been somebody else's. Then.
There's so many of these people, and I just started diving deep into the hole of watching people make things. I had never done anything with my life at that point. I was a senior in high school at the time, and I was in band growing up, and then I would go home and sit on my ass and play games and watch YouTube, and I never did anything physical outside of that.
Hey, video games are pretty intense, man.
Yeah.
I've been playing Helldiver.
I haven't touched it yet.
Oh, God, dude.
But every time my friends are playing it and I'm just like chilling in a Discord chat with them, they're just screaming at each other.
Insane. It's absolutely anarchy every time I go and fight for Super Earth.
Yeah, whatever it takes for Super Earth. We got to spread democracy.
Yeah. Yes.
So yeah, I don't know how I figured out that I enjoyed watching people make things, or that I would eventually enjoy doing it myself, because it was never something that I had taken part in.
Nobody in your family or anything else like that?
Nothing. I'm surrounded by desk jockeys.
Okay.
College goers. Lame.
Boring.
And so I eventually, it is funny that it started with woodworking, and I didn't immediately go into woodworking. But when I discovered blacksmithing, I started with a few different channels. One pretty small one, Florist Postmus. He's this kid about my age out in Sweden, who's just making gorgeous things. He never used much in the way of power tools. He'd use like really old, it's called a fly press, which is basically just a giant thread that applies a ton of force down the same way that a hydraulic press would.
Huh. So you just sit there and twist it?
Yeah. I mean, and the thing's huge. It's like 3 feet in diameter. And you just swing that arm around and it undoes the thread. They're such a cool machine. I love them.
You got to get one for your shop.
They're a little hard to come by nowadays. People aren't making them. But if we can find one, I would love one. I did spend a good amount of time looking for one back when I started blacksmithing, but I realized that they just are not that common of an instrument anymore. Alex Steele is a huge blacksmith that a lot of people have watched. I think I started watching him around when him and Will Stelter. No, probably about a year before he moved to the United States and started making content with Will.
So was this just like a day where at one point you're watching wood making or woodworking, and then like a suggestion popped up?
Exactly.
And you're like, oh, that's cool.
Might as well. That looks cool. It was a good looking thumbnail or something. And I was just like, that looks interesting. I've never been a knife guy. I've never purchased knives. I've never used knives. I don't hunt. I didn't know how to cook at that time, like nothing. And so I just started going down the rabbit hole. In the same way with the wood turning, I just kind of kept looking through the catalog of blacksmithing and knife making videos on YouTube. And eventually I got to a point where I felt like I was running out. there's only so much content on that platform, and I had seen almost all of it. And
Like, I can do
I was
this.
just like, there's got to be something. And it kind of coincided with a point in my life that I was not doing great mentally. I had suffered with depression for most of my life, still do. But I hadn't really had coping mechanisms up until
Okay.
that point. I just kind of dealt with it. I was like, yeah, I guess a lot of people are probably sad a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's a very dealing with PTS. They got rid of the D, oddly enough.
Interesting.
They don't call it the disorder anymore.
It's just stress.
Yeah, post traumatic stress and depression thereafter, anxiety. The only thing I can relate to that is you feel like everybody else has something going on, so you're like, this is just normal.
Yeah.
And you don't realize it's not normal
It's
until
not
you
at
talk
all.
to a therapist and you're like, wait, am I not supposed to be thinking this
And
way?
we're gonna get there to therapy,
Okay,
because
yeah.
I got my first therapist shortly after like the height of my depressive episodes.
Okay.
Um,
Did this start in high school, middle school?
the
Like, when did-
depression,
Yeah.
I feel like it was just kind of something that I was born with.
Okay.
It's was more something that was brought on like to the forefront of it became a problem when things exacerbated it in my life. To make a very long story short, I had several relationships in high school that were very abusive in just about any way that they could be, including physically. That is not something that is a one-way street. It can go both ways.
Right. Females towards males, males towards females.
Yeah, it's absolutely gender equality is a prime one on that one. And so I was just kind of like at the end of my rope with these relationships, which were messing me up. Turns out I'm an emotional guy. I get very invested very fast. And so the way that these relationships were turning out turned out to be terrible for me. If I had just done a bit better job of vetting it out, I could have avoided so much stress. But I don't think I would change where I am today. And none of this getting into blacksmithing and knife making and learning how to make things and starting my business, none of that would have started if I didn't hit rock bottom first, because
Right.
I wouldn't have had a reason to. And so I did attempt suicide my senior year of high school. I remember November 18th, 2018. And going into it, I made the decision and I gave myself a week to live. And I said, I will do as much as I can in that week. Just fuck it. I'm not going to be around in a week, so who cares? So I started completing bucket list items, just going doing shit that I wanted to. I started skipping school for the first time in my life. I was like, who cares about my grades? Those are not going to matter in a week. And one of those things was make a knife. And so with, I think like $75 in my bank account, I went to Home Depot. I got a piece of mild steel. Does not make a great knife, turns out. An angle grinder. And then I had on hand one of those 1x30 Wen benchtop grinders, a smaller version of the one that I use in my shop now, because I had originally been really interested in like tool restoration.
Okay.
And that was kind of the first step that I took into it. So I just happened to have that on hand. But besides that, those are the only tools that I owned. And I just like cut off a piece of mild steel, threw on some quick bevels. I hand sanded it. I don't know why the hell I decided to hand sand my first knife, but I hand sanded it to a mirror finish. I'm like, well, I've got a week to live. Might as well spend 7 hours of it hand sanding a knife. I don't know who decided that was a good idea.
It's a long time, dude.
Oh yeah. I also sucked at hand sanding. I'm a little better now. And slapped some oak scales on it. Did not know how to shape a handle back then, so that thing is still like 1.5 inches thick.
Do you still have this knife?
I do. It's very uncomfortable to hold on to, and it was never sharpened, but it is very important to me
Right.
as a starting point. Not even just as the first knife, but like this was the last thing that I did before I tried to remove myself from this world. I finished that on November 17th. And then the next day I attempted to kill myself. I failed, clearly. And I just kind of like didn't know where to go from there. I'd spent a lot of my life being a liar, being kind of manipulative, being very sheltered and just like not letting people into my life. And so there were a lot of things about me that my mom just did not know about me.
You're putting on a show for
Exactly.
almost everybody around you.
Yeah. And so one of the first things I did, because it was exhausting to keep the filing cabinet of lies and excuses up to date constantly, is I just went to the most important people in my life and let it all out. And I was just like, here's everything that I have ever lied to you about. Here's everything that you thought you knew about me. Here's how it actually is. And that was not easy.
Did anybody turn you away?
No, luckily.
Isn't that crazy?
It's fantastic. And I was so worried.
Right. I make that point because there are so many people that are in a similar situation like that.
Yeah.
That feel this fear, like, oh, if I just do this, they're just going to turn away from me. They're not going to want to know the true me. And it's like, when you have this realization that, wait, they're cool with this. They feel, I feel bad when they felt bad for me, because I had a similar situation happen where, you know, you let people into your little bubble of like the inner sanctum of your brain, right? You're like, are they going to run away? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's like, am I going to be rejected? But yeah, I just wanted to ask, because
they're always great.
Yeah.
You do get scared because you've spent so many years stacking on like the layers of irony and false personality that you're like, well, they don't know who I really am. They kind of do. People aren't as non-observant as we give them credit for.
Yeah.
People have an idea, because like 3/4 of the things that I told my mom, she's like, yeah, of course, you idiot. I'm not stupid. But there were still some things that I had on her.
Yeah.
One of the funniest
I got you over on this one.
One of the funniest ones to me is that she thought that I had never cursed in my life. I don't know why I would like decide to live up that curse. My mom curses more than I do. It's not like I was going to get in trouble for all of a sudden cursing. I was just like, no, I don't. Sorry, Mom. And then I come clean her and I'm just like, yeah, I fucking do. And she's like, cool. Awesome. Now you sound just like the rest of us. I'm like, why was that hard?
Yeah.
It shouldn't have been. But after spending several days just airing out all of my dirty laundry,
this is still in high school.
Yeah, this is all in the span of like a week. This is still November. We spent some time just sitting down talking about it, trying to figure it out. My mom's a little lucky; she hasn't had to deal with too many mental health issues in her life. She got the short end of the stick on physical health, but up top she's been pretty healthy. And so she was like, I'm not the best person for you to talk to about this. Let's see if we can get you a therapist. And I've heard a lot of horror stories about therapists, of people just getting someone who was not right for them, who couldn't help solve their problems. I must have done something right, because I literally nailed it first try. She was amazing. Just very quickly, like we spent the first 2 sessions just telling her about my life, what led to this point of why did you attempt suicide 3 weeks ago? What's going on with you? And then from there on out, she was never afraid to both figure out how I absorbed the world around me, because as I learned in therapy, that's not consistent for everybody. Different people feel the world in different ways. And when you speak to someone, you'll interpret it differently. And when you feel an emotion, you'll feel it differently. That was a crazy one for me, realizing that I tended to not feel emotions in my head, but rather just throughout my body. And I got physical guttural reactions when I felt emotions. And she was just very patient with me, working me down the list of figuring out everything that was wrong with me, that felt wrong with me, but wasn't actually wrong with me.
That's just how you perceive and think.
Things that I wanted to change, things that I wanted to feel more secure about. And for starters, I was seeing her, I think, 4 times a week. But by the end of my senior year of high school, I was seeing her once every 2 weeks. And now I see her once a year. Oh. I should probably do a little bit more than that.
I'm still a once a week type of guy.
Yeah. I am still pretty, I like to stay reserved in my things. And I feel like there's not too much going wrong in my life.
Yeah.
I feel like she did a very good job of teaching me habits to
Well, 4 days a week is a lot.
Oh yeah.
That's
Oh,
more
yeah.
than some college classes, dude.
Like I spent so much time with her just to get me off the cliff as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Um, there's so many other side effects from my senior year was crazy. Give me a second.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, a lot of the like the straw that broke the camel's back was the girlfriend that I had at the time cheating on me several times. One of which with a guy that I had looked up to for most of my life. I consider one of my best friends in the whole world. And that was not easy to deal with. I am 5.5 years later, and I still find myself thinking about it as much as I don't want to. That feels like a scar that will not go away, as much as I would love for it to. But it's gotten better. It used to be one of those things where I could barely go an hour without thinking about it, and now I can usually go a couple weeks.
Right.
So that's I take that as a win. Obviously, I would love to never think about that again, but the fact that I have gotten any improvement, any
Relief.
yeah, that's a win. I feel great about that because that means that I'm doing something and I'm changing for the better.
Yeah.
But one of the first side effects, and this was the first point where my mom knew that something was up, was I stopped eating as soon as I got the news that she cheated on me. I didn't eat for 2 straight days. Didn't eat, drink, anything, just totally dry. And I always had a very high metabolism growing up. I would have to eat considerably more than the 2,000 calorie average just to maintain my weight. And it kind of showed itself here. I woke up after that second day, and I've always really struggled with like self-image and my weight and the way that I look in the mirror and stuff like that. So I was weighing myself 10 to 12 times a day in high school. So I knew how heavy I was constantly. And when I go to bed 170 and I wake up 135,
Good God.
something happened. To this day, I don't know what. 35 pounds is a lot of weight.
Yeah.
But I was gaunt. I had lost just about any body fat that I had. 135 of probably 5'10" at the time is nothing. That's skin and bones.
That's how much I weighed when I joined the military.
Oh,
I was like
Jesus.
140. I looked did you ever watch Captain America?
Yeah.
You look like the I looked like Captain Rogers pre-ejection. And then after I came home because they got that biscuit, not to derail your story, but
you're good.
They've got the biscuits with this fruit topping stuff.
Okay.
That because you had to sit there at an upright position and look straight ahead and eat. So it's super hard. You couldn't look down at your food. So I just eat biscuits every morning, and I came back home and I was like 180.
Ooh.
So I went from 40 pounds of like pure muscle.
Hell yeah.
And I came home, I was like, I feel good.
Nice.
But then I developed that similar feeling where I look in the mirror and I was so worried. I was like, I don't want to go back down to 130. I don't want to go back down.
Yep.
And so it became like, and then every time I would lose a little bit of muscle tone, I'd be like, I'm slipping
in your head.
Yeah. And nobody knows.
Nobody
knows. Nobody notices. They're like, oh, he's still like super fit.
Yeah.
I still see every time I look in the mirror, little tiny scrawny Captain Rogers. Every time I look in the mirror.
So yeah, I had a lot of dietary issues result from that immediately
because of the 2 days.
Yeah. My stomach shrank. I couldn't eat more than 100 calories in a day without throwing it back up. And that persisted for the next week. And then I was slowly able to work back up into eating a normal human amount of food.
Right.
But I never got back up to that beforehand. So I always when I was a kid growing up, everyone's like, that metabolism's not going to last you. And I'm like, well, it's going to last me a while. Joke's on me.
You stopped it.
Because to this day, it still hasn't come back.
Right.
Luckily, I'm at an average human, like adult male right now.
Yeah.
So at least it didn't go below that.
You look good, dude.
Thank you. But yeah, I could have had just like a dirt nasty metabolism still.
Yeah.
But whoops.
You eat all the in and out that you want.
No, seriously. It was ridiculous. I ate 2 lunches, a pre-dinner, dinner, and an after dinner. Just to stay at a casual 170. I wish now, dude.
I know.
But that became this like sub story of my senior year of because I was always, as much as I gave myself shit, like I was fit. I was plenty skinny. I was muscular. Um, and then I went from being ridiculously skinny, lost a ton of the necessary body fats, and then trying to get that weight back, it went in the opposite direction. And I got all the way up to 200 by the end of my senior year.
So from 135
to 200 in the span of 6 months.
Oh God.
It was terrible for me. But it's funny because that gaining weight was the period of the most like mental recovery.
Okay.
I've spent my whole life telling myself that like you can't get fat, you can't put on those pounds, none of that. And I sit here and I gain 65 pounds and enter what had been at that point the best mental health of my life after the worst.
So mental health improved, physical health
went in the shitter.
Yeah.
Maybe
I would take that.
Yeah.
Like 100%.
Because I'm still young enough that like clearly I've rebounded.
Yeah.
I'm doing great now.
Yeah.
But that 200 pounds took several years for me to even shave one of them off. I got stuck hard. And COVID was the catalyst.
When did you graduate high school?
2019.
Yeah, COVID.
Just before COVID.
God.
I got out just in time. So let's get back into knives and how that plays into this whole story.
Yeah. So while you're going through this mental health recovery, you had already made your first knife.
So I had made the first knife the day before I attempted suicide.
Right.
I have a tendency to not like things undone. I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I gave myself a week to live, to just close out any loose exchanges. And so I kind of noticed that about myself very quickly. And I was like, let's use this to our advantage. And so it was several weeks before I got into therapy. And so the only solutions that I had were ones that I could come up with off the top of the dome. And the first one that I came up with was just keep making things.
Because you're saying from when you told your mom and your friends about everything to the time that you got a first appointment?
Yeah, it was several weeks. So I spent several weeks just kind of in my mind palace thinking that I should be dead. And, well, people around me don't want me dead. What can we do to delay a couple weeks? And so I just started making more knives. I was like, I'm probably not going to want to kill myself if I have an in-progress project. That wouldn't sit well with me. So I just started making things. And the second that I would finish one project, I would start another. Didn't matter if it was 6 a.m. or 10 p.m.
Was your mom worried about you making knives after trying to kill yourself?
Oh, yeah.
I was about to like,
oh, yeah.
Like, I know there's many different methods.
Yeah.
Right? But like,
I had attempted to slit my throat. And so she was like, are you sure that this is the path to recovery? And I'm like, don't worry about it. Trust me. Plus, even just like the idea of forging in general, I've been doing this for 5 years and she's still kind of uncomfortable with what I do. She doesn't like that it's happening in her house. She kind of wants me to move out and go get my own shop and stop doing this in her garage. And there was a point where all of that kind of flipped over and she became more supportive. And that was around when I got on Forged in Fire. But everything before that, she was just very hesitant. But I think she didn't say anything because I had just attempted suicide. And she was like, I just kind of need to let him do what he needs to do.
And be there for you.
Yeah.
What a great mom.
So she did not want to fight back, and bless her soul. Because if my kid just starts making knives in my garage, I'm whooping his ass. I'm like, what do you think you're doing? Go get some training. Go take a class. But no.
Yeah, you watch YouTube.
My dumbass watched YouTube, bought the tools, and just started doing it. Nobody told me how to do anything.
That's awesome.
She found a farrier online and had him come by and inspect my setup. And the guy was like, to be honest with you, I've been basically retired for the last 10 years. Your setup doesn't look like it's about to explode, but I'm not going to teach you anything. And then he walked out.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I just kept making knives. Friends would come by and ask like, hey, can you make me this? And I was like, sure, might as well. I started going to like junkyards and scrapping cars, getting leaf springs and coil springs, trying to see if I could forge out of that. Doing all of this by hand. Again, I wasn't a very physically fit guy before this. Like I was,
Well, now you're skinny at this point.
yeah, I was super skinny.
Sweating your ass off with the forge on.
Swinging this hammer, and I've always had bad wrists, specifically my right wrist. My mom's like, "You're a fucking idiot."
Like out of all the hobbies,
yeah, you
Sean,
had to pick the thing that's just gonna ruin you immediately. And yeah, I just kept going. I do have the picture that is my lock screen. This is a picture from high school, and that is me on December 18th, 1 month after my suicide attempt. And I keep that there just as a reminder because he's smiling.
Yeah.
Why can't I? And yeah, my friends were ridiculously supportive. I had a few mental health episodes after this. I had never had anything besides just like the overwhelming sadness until after the suicide attempt, where I started getting dissociative episodes. I would basically just black out and not remember what happened. And all of a sudden, I was a 10-mile drive away from my house. I had driven while not conscious of what was happening. One of my friends found me walking in circles around the local park because they hadn't heard from me for an hour and they were worried about me. Another time I ended up at my high school during one of the choir concerts and I wasn't in choir. I don't know why I was there. I just remember the first thing I remember was one of my friends being like, "Why are you here?" And I'm like, "What? I was at my home 1 second ago."
And this is before therapy?
No, this was after.
Okay.
This was shortly after I started therapy. And so I went to my therapist and I was like, "What's going on? I've never had this happen before." I remember there was one time in my statistics class in high school where I have a very loud head. There's just always something going on in there. Never been able to turn it off.
Hey, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, cheers.
And something I'm realizing is that more people have that than don't.
You know what surprises me is that my wife doesn't.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, hey, do you have like, and I don't want to sound like I'm schizophrenic. It's not like voices,
but it's like
But-
you.
it's me thinking about other stuff.
Yeah.
While I'm having this conversation.
I can get so in depth about this with you because I've like psychoanalyzed my own head voice so specifically so I can describe it to other people so that they don't think I'm insane and they end up thinking I'm insane.
Yeah, I try to explain it to people, but then I'm just like, it's fine.
Yeah.
And you know, part of that is I do have ADHD.
Yeah. I
And
think
it's-
that's what does it for us.
Yeah.
Because same.
The first time I ever took Adderall and it went away, I was a little concerned.
Yeah.
I was like, what is this? It was silence.
It was beautiful.
And I was like, is this how normal people feel?
Oh yeah.
And my wife, Kaylee, was like, yeah. I'm like, this is like a cheat code. You know how hard school was?
So I took the
okay.
opposite effect. I started medicating my ADHD when I was 6 years old. You ask me as an adult, that's too young.
That's way, yeah.
I should have started trying to learn habits before that. And if it became too much of an issue, then start medicating me. But I do think that was a mistake in my upbringing.
Was it Adderall or Ritalin?
I started on Vyvanse.
Oh.
And then moved to Adderall when Vyvanse wasn't enough.
Yeah. I feel like Vyvanse has weird side effects.
It did.
Like with dreams and stuff.
Oh yeah. It was weird.
Yeah.
And so by like 4th or 5th grade, I was taking Adderall between 30 and 35 milligrams in the morning. Oh yeah.
Dude.
Oh yeah.
Your voices are loud. Mine aren't that loud.
And so I would always try to challenge myself because I really enjoy being able to solve my problems myself. I don't even take fucking ibuprofen or Tylenol if I don't need to. I'm like, I can train myself how to get past this obstacle.
I know when you had that little leg in thing and you were hobbling around, I'm like, you good? He's like,
yeah. And so I try to take the same approach with my ADHD. Use the Adderall to remember what your brain is supposed to feel like. And then on days where you can afford to not have it, don't.
try to
and
get
train.
there. Yeah.
And so I would only take Adderall on school days or on days where I had to go do something. But on the weekends, it was always off. Summer vacations, always off. And by my senior year of high school, I stopped entirely. To this day, I haven't taken Adderall since.
Is that when you started going to therapy?
No, I just made the decision at the beginning of my senior year.
Okay.
The very beginning of senior year was actually a pretty high point, and then it very quickly went to a very low point. But I was just like, I've done it long enough. I feel like I can accomplish this.
Yeah,
I can accomplish life without Adderall.
Yeah, you've had enough summers off and things like that to kind of develop those coping mechanisms. I'm kind of in the same boat. My almost 5-year-old for sure has ADHD, but we're not. It's like one of those things. I grew up with it and I coped with it. Some of the coping mechanisms were environmentally based on trauma. As some people with ADHD will like experience, it's like, oh wow, this kid's just like a really outstanding kid. And internally, it's just you've been traumatized by things. So it's like you shut the voice off because of that.
You run a tight ship.
Yeah. Well, so the problem is like I don't want to traumatize my kid to give him the coping mechanism. So most of the time I go to therapy, 30 minutes is for me. 30 minutes is how do I parent this child?
What a good dad.
I'm like, I've got this stuff I've got to figure out. I'm going to start the clock 30 minutes. And then after that, I need some like, how do I give him the coping mechanisms for his ADHD? And how can I explain it in a way that a 5-year-old will understand?
Impossible.
Yeah. Most of the time it's just like, if he's not hurting himself or anybody else and you really don't care about it, just let him do it.
Let him figure it out. Kids are smart.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So you just pull the trigger, you roll the dice senior year.
And just cut it out.
God, dude.
And so ever since then, I'll describe to you what my voice is like. I have 3. One of them is always having conversations that I think are about to happen in my life. I like to be prepared.
Did you have it for this podcast?
Oh, yeah. For the last several days. That's why I asked for your questions beforehand.
Did I give them? I don't even think I gave them to you.
You gave me a rough idea of what you're going to ask.
Okay.
And so that's why I'll ask those questions is because I'm like, I'm going to give that voice something to do for the next couple of days.
Right
on. Number 2 is always playing music, except in the most annoying way possible, where it's usually just repeating the same few seconds instead of going through the whole song. And that shit pisses me off. I hate that one. And then the third really only came about during all of this is a visionary. It just enjoys working out problems.
And that's when you started having problems in senior year?
When I started smithing and making things. That third one loves just working through whatever problems I have in my day-to-day that need to be solved. And when you work like as a cashier at Chipotle, that voice doesn't have much to do because once you clock out at the end of the day, it's not your problem anymore. But when I run my own business and I have knives that are sitting around in various stages of the process, that thing is going nuts. Just cataloging everything that needs to happen across all of those knives, coming up with new ideas for knives, coming up with new ideas for cutting boards and coffee tails and stuff like that. That voice has thrived now that I've become a maker. And
it's enjoyable though.
It is.
Okay.
It's these first 2 that are really annoying.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure you've figured this out to some capacity, but if you can stimulate the voice in the way that it likes to perpetuate, it goes away. So if I listen to music, that guy stops playing music. And if I make knives, that guy stops making knives. And then if I talk to someone at the same time, they're all gone. The problem is you get a little bit of auditory overstimulation when that happens. My friends know that if I'm in a Discord chat and there's more than 6 people, I have to immediately leave because 7 voices is just too much. My brain can't handle it. Or like, if you're ever like, do you listen to music when you play games?
On very rare occasions.
Because I've got friends that will like be in a Discord chat, play the game, listen to music, and like watch YouTube.
Oh,
I'm like,
that.
Oh my goodness, you iPad kid.
You know, it's yeah, seriously. It's so when I play games, it's almost a moment where all the voices kind of go away. And it's like, there was this really good Instagram where this girl's like, the background noise, like, and
And then they all said like 37.
then she puts the headphones on. She's like, she picks up the controller and plays. And I'm like, God, dude, that is like perfect depiction of how my brain works.
Because when you can find the thing that you want to focus on,
Oh yeah,
all of your brain will go to focus on
Yep.
that. But it's hard finding those things, which is why school is such a problem for ADHD kids, because they just don't want to be there.
Yeah, and it's like, what's the flavor of this week, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I love playing guitar. I recently just bought a keyboard because I'm like kind of done playing guitar. I want to learn to play the keyboard, right? I haven't played the keyboard in like 15 years, but it was one day it was on sale on Amazon. I'm like, I might as well buy that. Kaylee saw like the little stand for it. She's like, what the F? I'm like, oh yeah, I bought a keyboard. She's like, for what? You don't know how to play it. I'm like, I'm gonna learn.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah. So it's that is a frustrating part for me, is the what is the hyper focus. And what stresses me out, like when I started this podcast, I was like, damn, is this just a hyper focus that I'm going to be bored of in a week?
I'm scared of that all the time.
You know what I mean? It's like, I love this so much, I don't want it to go away.
Yeah.
And then I talked to my therapist. He's like, well, then just keep doing it. If you love it, you do it. And I'm like, he's like, I say that jokingly. I understand where your brain is.
No, but that is the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to quit my business so many times. And then I just went inside and have a conversation with my mom. And she would always come up with various things like, well, you've already spent so much money, like gambler fallacied me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you've already spent this much time getting good at it. Might as well just keep doing it. In the grand scheme of my life, like at the times when I wanted to quit, I'd only done it for like a year or two. That's not enough to devote the rest of your life to it. But my mom was like, I'll give him a reason. Yeah. And then I was just like, fuck it. And now every time I want to quit, I'm just like, shut up. I'm not going to quit.
The little voice that comes in, like, yeah. The insecure voice is probably the more annoying one that comes up, where it's like, oh, you're not good enough. Nobody's going to listen to you. Nobody's going to like your content. You know, that's the worst. And it's you post one thing and it like gets tens of thousands of views. And then like the next one you post only gets like a couple thousand. It's still getting a good chunk, but you're like, why was this one better? I was joking in that one, but this is good. I like this one more. So it's that the insecurity one, or the imposter syndrome. Is the worst.
I had a bit of that with Million Layer. We can get into that later.
Yeah, I want to get into, so this kind of all devolved into you continue to do knives. At what point did you go on Forged in Fire?
So,
or like get notified of it? Like I guess
had continued to make knives for several years. I went off to college shortly after high school. I went to University of Colorado Boulder.
So 2020?
Yes. Okay. Or 2019-2020 season, or the academic year. And I was declared as a computer science major, but getting the credentials to go into environmental engineering. I just didn't get accepted into the program when I first applied. I was a pretty lackluster student in high school in that I never tried, but I always scored so high. I graduated with a 3.2 GPA, having never done a piece of homework, and I got a 1440 SAT. I received a little plaque in the mail that said you had a top 1,000 SAT score in the entire nation this year. I was like, cool. And that SAT score got me into college.
And then college got you out of college?
Yep. We got there pretty quickly. Yeah. So I had, by the end of my senior year, I had gotten to a very comfortable point of just like making knives makes me feel fantastic. I have this mental health thing under control.
Okay. Because you spent the whole summer at this point
just wailing away.
Right.
The problem is that my time at CU did not allow that to continue. CU has a blacksmith studio, but you're only allowed access to it when you're an art major. Oh. And I was not. I was a science and engineering major. And so I tried. I begged. I pleaded. I was like, I can get you notes from accredited therapists and psychologists that say, this is a form of therapy for me. This is vital to my mental health. Please just let me in there once a week and I'll be out of your hair. And every single time they just said no. So after the first, I think 5 weeks of college, I was just going stir crazy. I was like, mental health is going back in the shitter. I do not have the coping mechanisms outside of making things with my bare hands.
And you're living in Boulder.
And I was at Boulder.
Okay.
And so the first thing that I attempted was I went to Hobby Lobby and I got a whittling kit that just provides those shitty little knives and the big old blocks of basswood. And I attempted whittling, having never whittled before.
But YouTube.
There
you go.
And within within the first hour, I sliced my finger so bad that I severed an artery and a nerve with one of the knives. To this day, I cannot feel this side of this finger. My roommate had to rush me to the ER. I applied an emergency tourniquet with a sock and a rubber band.
On your finger?
Yeah.
Oh
my roommate the whole time is just panicking. He looked white as a ghost. He was freaking the fuck out. And the whole time I am smooth sailing under pressure, especially when I injure myself. I just immediately lock in and I know exactly what to do. So just like, Robbie, just get us to the ER and I can take care of everything else. And the whole time he's driving, he's like kind of woozy.
Oh no.
Because I'm bleeding a bit.
Yeah.
And I'd cut this finger, over the summer, just before that.
Is that the scar on the first one right here?
Yeah. You can see those two scars.
Dude, that's nuts.
Where are they? That one?
Yeah.
And then that one. They're both kind of the same.
And
direction.
both from whittle?
The first one was I was using one of my own knives to open reinforced plastic packaging and just slipped. So now I exclusively use scissors.
Forever.
Yeah. But I felt good that one of my knives was able to cut my finger in half. But that one was not arterial. That one just kind of closed up on its own after an hour and a half. But I did go to urgent care. They put the super glue in there.
Yeah. The skin glue.
Yeah.
Don't use super glue.
Unless you really
need to. Yeah.
So this one, at first I was just like, oh, I've been here before. And every time I injure myself, the first thing I do is peel it open and peek just so I can see how deep it is.
Yep.
And this one just immediately was full of blood. And I was like, that might be worse.
Yeah.
So the first urgent care I went to actually turned me away because they were full of patients. All of them were like 5-year-olds with the flu. And I'm sitting here bleeding out. Yeah. Like arterial spray across the fucking OR. I'm not a fan of that operating room. I left a nasty review and I was like, you need to get that head nurse out of there because that is not how you treat patients. So by the time I actually got to an urgent care that would take care of me, it had been like 2.5 hours post cutting.
Yeah.
And they only had one sewing room where a construction worker had a very similar injury and almost lost his finger. And so they're like, you're going to have to wait until he's out of there, but we can get you in as soon as that's done. So I'm over here just like throwing cold water onto my face because the blood is not stopping and I'm getting lightheaded. By the end of it, everything was taken care of fine. It was confirmed when like the doctors were outside of the room. He like peeled it open and then quickly closed it and went outside the room and went to talk with the nurses. And I don't really remember what he said, but he was just like, yeah, it's arterial. We're going to have to be a little more serious about this. Came within nanometers of severing a ligament or tendon, whatever's in the finger.
Yeah.
But
so you still have joint manipulation.
Yeah. I'm still just fine over there. Just can't feel it too well. So once that happened, my mom was like, we can't just have you lollygagging with sharp weapons in your dorm room.
Yeah.
I'm going to come and bring you home every weekend so you can keep
because you didn't have a car?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't get a car until I was 20. Up until this point, I'd only ever had one job for 5 months. And then extracurriculars just took up too much of my time outside of that.
Sure.
And I spent all my money on blacksmithing tools.
Yeah.
So I didn't have anything laying around. And again, bless my mother, making that like hour and 15 drive from Castle Rock to Boulder back.
Yeah.
Hour and 15 one way. Every weekend.
Shout out to your mom
for a whole semester.
What a bomb mom.
And after that point, I was just like, CU is not offering me anything that I can't get at a community level. So I'm just going to fall back, get a job, work, and try to get an education. And so I got the job at the Red Robin on the Hill that was literally sold yesterday. That's getting replaced.
What is it getting replaced with?
I don't know. But my mom sent me news of that yesterday.
Changing times. Castle Rock is growing.
Yeah. I'm kind of happy about it because they were running that thing into the ground.
Yeah.
But I worked there for a year and a half, saved up a ton of money. Ended up dropping out of community college as well. But because I started that semester and then COVID happened 2 months later, the whole thing got forgiven.
Yeah.
So
That's good.
Yeah. CU didn't get forgiven. I had to pay that
those
back, but
yeah.
I already have.
Student loans will get you.
Yeah. And at this point, this is now, by the time that I left Red Robin, this is summer of 2021.
Okay.
I've been making knives for 2.5 years, and I have yet to meet another blacksmith. Not one.
So you're still just doing this based on YouTube,
entirely self-taught. And you could kind of tell I wasn't really selling things at this point. I was still just kind of making them for fun, giving them out to friends. Coworkers would pay me like $30-$40 just to recoup the materials.
Mm-hmm.
And then around August of that year, so I quit with $15,000 in my bank account. Originally, I was going to go make a food truck and run that around Castle Rock. But when I looked more into the
laws,
all the red tape around it,
yep,
I was close, but I didn't quite have the resources available to accomplish it. So I was like, fuck it. I've already got a blacksmithing business. Let's just funnel all that money over there. It was at this point when I quit Red Robin that I got my first girlfriend since high school. I'd spent
2 years.
Several years single, very much on purpose. I wasn't even looking.
That's good, dude.
Just to get everything absolutely locked up tight and figured out.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that go from one relationship to the other to fix their own problems.
Yeah.
You know?
And I could tell that I did the right thing almost immediately because I was just such a different human being, even though I hadn't been in a relationship and I hadn't practiced these skills required for a relationship, but just immediately so successful. I was so much better at setting boundaries and putting expectations up front of just like, if you do this, this will be my reaction.
Yeah.
Due to my past trauma. And she, I think it was very convenient for both of us because she had a similar background. And so we just very quickly bonded about like, we're not going to do this to each other. That is not how this is going to end. We're going to do everything that we can to bring each other up. And I'm not with her anymore, but that ended very amicably of just like, this isn't 100% of what we're looking for in the future. And I am so grateful for the relationships that I've had since high school because it's fun being an adult.
Yeah, when you shed, it's almost like a phoenix after the fire, right? Because it's like you shed all this bullshit, and then you find out who you truly are, and then when you start a relationship, when you know who you are,
it's so fun.
Yeah, it's like not as stressful. Clear boundaries. It's like
great.
It's really. I feel it's actually things I worry about as a father because I know when I was 16, I didn't listen to my mom at all. Right?
Amen.
I'm like, you ain't gonna tell me shit about relationships. I wish I listened. So I'm like, how do I'm like trying to build that relationship now. Even though he's 5, he's not gonna date anybody for hopefully at least 10 years.
I don't know. I was making out with kids in like when I was 5 or 6.
God, you dog.
I was a dog.
God, I didn't have my first kiss until I was like, I was 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was when my first actual kiss happened.
Yeah.
Like the one that counted.
Yeah. The one I'm counting. No, but I do worry about that because I have a friend that's one of my best friends from high school. And I always looked at his life fondingly because it's like every girlfriend that he always had like really good boundaries. And like for me, I just got so involved with the relationship itself that I lost a lot of myself. That the other person in the relationship lost a lot of their selves, and we all both fell away from our friends groups.
That sounds so familiar.
Yeah, I'm sure we could chat for hours.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so you end up starting this company.
So yeah,
and you meet your first blacksmith.
So in August of that year, my mom is watching the news, and there's a story about a local 19-year-old that just won Forged in Fire. And she's like, Sean, you've got to go meet him. there's finally someone in Colorado. Come to find out, there had been people in Colorado for quite some time, and
So
I
a
just
lot of
didn't
people,
know
yeah.
where to look.
Forged in Fire, watch it.
Yeah.
Like,
and so I look up the article online. I find his name. I look him up on Instagram. His name's Jaden Samiski, the Slacksmith. I've hung out with him plenty. I love reposting his stuff. He's amazing. And the guy's a fucking year and a half younger than me.
how long has he been doing it?
He's been doing it since he was like 13.
Okay.
So he's got a little bit of a head start on me.
Yeah.
But he's fantastic. So I go up to his place and I take a railroad spike class, which he introduced as a beginner course. Is it here?
Your railroad spike. Keep grab it off the thing.
I don't want to break anything.
You're not going to break anything. Are you able to get him out?
Yeah.
Yeah, buddy. Shout out to your business, dog. Don't stab me.
You don't know me.
Get him. Yeah.
There we go. Little railroad spikes.
Yeah, buddy.
So I went and took one with him. His cost me $150.
How much is yours?
100. And mine started out at 60.
Get your deal, guys. This is how I actually met Sean, with side tangent.
Yeah.
I got a railroad spike. Well, you don't have certificates yet.
No.
So if you
should
want-
I?
I think the guest thing is awesome because when people buy it, they can gift it to people.
Okay. I'll work.
But
on
it's
that.
going to be hard because then you have to invoice it, track it. Then you feel more obliged. What happens if you ever close? What happens if you ever move? Is there a reimbursement process? It's annoying. I get it. There's downsides to this. But if you're currently living in the South Denver metro area or in Douglas County or Castle Rock, check out Meadows Forging. You can do a railroad spike class. It was honestly one of the best experiences of my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's tall praise.
Yeah, dude. And I've done a lot of shit. And make this is actually Kaylee's. Mine's cooler. Mine's more of like an orc knife.
Oh, you should see the one that one of my students made the other
Did
day.
you like flare it?
Oh my goodness. It had like recurve on the edge, recurve on the spine. It
Did you
was
take a picture of it?
crazy. I didn't, but I can ask him. He lives around here.
Okay. Well, I'll get his name afterwards.
Okay.
Because I think it might have been a friend that I
Ben
referred.
Or James.
Nope. Kyle's a guy that should be coming to see you soon.
Okay.
So-
So yeah, I took a railroad spike class with him, and railroad spike classes are beginner classes. You go to them when you don't know how to make knives, and so I show up with almost 3 years of experience, and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And so we do something extra special. We welded a high carbon bit on the edge. Did it all by hand. I used his power equipment to forge out the blade. I did a recurve on the edge and a little harpoon point at the front. And we etched the whole thing, and it was a ton of fun just spending a day with him. And then he reaches out to me a day later, and he's like, "You don't have to sign up for classes to come hang out with me. You can just drive on up here, and we can make shit."
Where does he live?
He lives in Boulder.
Okay.
He goes to
Dude, if
see
only you knew him.
If only I knew him.
Dude.
Um,
You could have had a bachelor's degree.
oh, you don't want to
doctorate.
know how many
No,
times
just
my
kidding.
mom has told me that. Like, if only you'd waited it out and met Jaden.
Yeah.
And so I start going to his shop more. I start hanging out. He unofficially makes me his apprentice, which more so just meant that I get to do the menial labor that he didn't want to, like grinding knives and hand sanding.
Sure.
But the whole time I just got to sit there and make cool things with him. I was allowed to bring billets, make Damascus with him, all of this stuff, and use his fancy tools. Because this was before I had my press. I was still making everything by hand. And he invites me to a group chat that's just called Hammer In. A Hammer In is a meeting of blacksmiths where they just go and make stuff. And there are 40 other blacksmiths in this group chat, all in the Denver metro area.
Like, where have you all been?
Who knows? Half of them are my age. It's not even just like a bunch of old farts who've been doing this for forever. It's a bunch of us kids, and we bond quite a bit that way. Myself, Jaden, and a guy named Ryan, who runs Soul Creation Forge, all got pretty close quickly because we were all 2021 and just fucking around and having fun. And very quickly, I noticed the quality of my work go through the roof because I had other knives to hold on to and compare. I had people to teach me, And not just one guy. I wasn't just learning Jaden's style. I was learning 40 different people's cumulative hundreds of years of experience all coming together to finally teach me how it's actually done. And after a couple months of going to Jaden's shop and hanging out, he just snide comment one day. He's like, "Hey, I saw David Baker posted something on his Facebook the other day that he's accepting new contestants for season 9 of Fortune Fire. I think you could do pretty well." And I was like, I don't know Jaden.
And Jaden had already been on Fortune
Jaden had already been on Fortune Fire and one-handedly
really
performed fantastic.
Do you know what season episode?
I don't. But his is the Elephant Tusk Sword, I believe.
What's his last name?
SIMISKY. Jaden, JAYDEN. And eventually he's able to convince me to apply for the show. Jaden had actually been reached out to by Fortune Fire executives. There's not many people that get reached out to by Fortune Fire, but he was one of them.
Okay, so it's the Ultimate Axe?
No,
not that one.
I think he has it on his Instagram. Season 8, episode 16 of Fortune Fire, Jaden won. And I remember Jaden won his episode because his final piece was made of Damascus and his opponent's was not.
Fit and finish, baby.
Yeah.
Gotta love that quote.
So he tells me that I got to go on Fortune Fire, that I'm probably going to win or at least do well. And him and I have had talks now. He was just buttering me the fuck up.
He just wants you to do it.
Yeah, he just wanted me to do it.
He thought you were going to be out the first round.
We'll get into that. And so I go and fill out this Google form that basically just asks you a bunch of questions. How long you've been doing it? How many knives do you think you've made? A whole bunch of stuff. Basically just your first vetting of the process. And I've had in this group chat, about half of us have gone on Fortune Fire.
Oh, very cool.
And I am the most recent. So all of these guys had gone on plenty before me.
Because you are season
9, episode 2.
Okay.
And they're only up to season 10 now.
Well, Netflix has only gotten up to 8.
Yeah. I think my episode recently came to Disney and Hulu.
Oh, solid.
Because I had old people from high school reach out to me and be like, "You were on Fortune Fire?"
Yeah.
Yeah, that was years ago. And so from what I had been told, you would expect to hear back from them after several months. Like it took them a good amount of time to come back and find you. I received an email back in a week that was just like, "We think you'd be a good fit. We're going to set up a meeting for you, or you're going to talk with one of our executive producers. They're going to set up an interview and see if you would actually be a good fit for TV."
Right.
So I had passed like the blacksmith precursor.
Check. Yeah. How's your personality in front of a camera?
Yeah, because that's important. It is a reality TV show. They're not sitting here rigging things. They're not rigging victors. They're not rigging results, any of that stuff. What they are rigging is like
content.
Yeah. Just making it more interesting.
Yeah.
When you're watching Chopped and the blender stops working, that didn't just happen. That was set up. That was scripted.
Yep.
And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And so I go to do the personality interview. That was kind of rigged because the first question that they asked me was to just describe myself. And the first thing I said was just like pretty shy, reserved, keep to myself. And she was like, "All right, cut. That's not going to do it. You're not going to get on Fortune Fire if that's your answer." And then she just started feeding me lines.
Do you know what's funny is I did a try, or no, what are they called? An audition for a game show.
Ooh.
And it was La Rita Loca or something like that. I don't know. My buddy Griffin and I were just like, "Oh, let's give it a shot." And dude, it's funny the direction that they give you, because like I initially I was like, "Hey, I'm Matt, excited to be here, blah blah blah," and she's like, "I don't know, this is like a game show, you could win millions of dollars." So I literally went off camera and I'm like, "Hi, I'm Matt and I'm super excited to be here," and she's like, That's much better.
They know exactly what they
Yeah,
want.
exactly, yeah.
And they don't want to sit here and have to go through 30 people just to find the one who's genuinely like that. They're
Right.
like, fuck it, we can just make
Yeah.
someone act a little bit more like that.
Yeah.
So when I actually got on there, I had to remember a lot of that stuff that I said about my personality that wasn't actually true. And I was like, I got to play this guy. And
but you've been putting on faces your whole life.
Yeah, I was a
So
pro.
you're like, here I am.
I got this.
Right.
There's a really funny moment from my episode where I do a pig call really loudly every time. So my episode was blackout. We had no electricity. No.
Oh, okay.
We had no electricity, and so there was no timer. And so the only timer was Grady giving us updates from his watch of just like, oh, hey, you've got an hour left. And so one of the times he gave us the call out, and I just went, because I was like, I've got to be loud and boisterous. I told them I was. And of course, that made the final cut.
Yeah.
That one made it into the episode. I hosted a watch party when my episode came out with a bunch of my friends and family. The room went dead silent as soon as that happened.
And they all just
looked at me like, what the hell's wrong with you, dude?
You would never do that.
I was like, I got it, man.
Yeah.
They asked me to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got through the first few stages of the interview process pretty seamlessly. The one major hiccup was they asked that you had made anywhere between 60 and 75 knives in your life up to that point.
60 and 75?
Just
how many had you made?
Maybe 30.
Okay.
So I
Quality?
lied. Questionable.
Yeah.
So I definitely lied. There was a deadline for they wanted a portfolio of at least 15 pictures.
Sure.
For proof of variety of work that you can do.
Yeah.
And I realized that I only had finished pictures of 12 knives.
Oh, no.
So in the week leading up to that, I finished 3 knives.
That's a lot.
Just to get especially at that time and how inefficient I was working, that was absurd. Nowadays I could do 3 knives in 3 days. That's easy. Especially because it wasn't start to finish knives. It was just knives that I had laying around that I quick finished up. I could have done that in a day now.
Yeah.
And so I squeaked onto there through kind of fibbing about my experience. And I can't go too into detail about the behind the scenes.
Sure.
And stuff like that. But my challenge was blackout. We had no electricity. That's not camera tricks. That was very real. There were no lights in the studio besides these little oil lanterns that we lit besides our setups. That proved very annoying.
For seeing
because you got to measure your piece.
Yeah.
To make sure you're making parameter. You can't see the fucking ruler because there's no light. It was ridiculous.
Lantern, yeah. Oh man.
No power tools, no grinders, no hammers to move the material.
But at this point, you haven't had that much experience with
never had power tools,
right?
Except for the 2 months leading up to this that I worked at Jaden's shop.
So you're like, this is what I'm used to.
This.
Yeah.
Except that our starting stock was inch round W1, which is infamously very hard to work unless it's at the right temperature. It just doesn't want to move. And I had never worked with anything more than 1/4 inch thick bar stock because why would I need to?
Yeah. Why would you do it?
Yeah, it's just torture to yourself. But I did feel good about myself because I was the youngest guy there. I was 20. My competitors were 23, 37, and 50, I believe. So I'm like, oh, the 50-year-old's out of here. There's no shot.
His eyes suck.
The guy that got it, so I had 2 years of experience at that point. I made my first knife 3 years ago, but had taken multiple 6 months breaks between college and work.
Okay.
And so I made my first knife 5.5 years ago. I have 4.5 years experience today. That's generally how I word it.
Yep.
Though I've stopped caring the longer it's gone on because I'm 4.5 years is plenty. 5.5 years is fine. I'll just tell people 5.5 years.
You've surpassed the college degree.
Yeah. And I make good enough knives that 5.5 years is yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But before people were looking at 3 years and they're maybe get a different hobby, buddy.
Yeah.
So I had 2 years of experience. The 23-year-old had 3 years of experience, exclusively stock removal.
Okay.
Did not forge at home. 37-year-old, I think 13 years of experience. Never used propane in his life. Only worked with a coal forge. 50-year-old, 3 years experience, but he'd been making things for half his life.
Okay, so he's good with his hands.
He got into blacksmithing because he didn't like the quality of stonemason tools on the market, so he learned how to make his own.
That's pretty badass.
I love that.
Like,
That is a
I'm pissed
great
off with
origin
this stuff.
story.
I can make better stuff.
Ron is a fantastic human. I'm gonna go out to Oregon and hang out with him one of these days. I want to go and hang out with
Did
all of them.
Are you allowed to say who ended up winning?
Yeah, it was Ron, the 50-year-old.
So
The
guy that's been
50-year-old
working
won
with his hand.
everything.
Yeah. The guy you thought, no, his eyes suck. There's no way he's gonna win.
Yep, he kicked my ass. The 37-year-old ended up going out first. The guy with the most experience.
Really? Just
And
not used to the conditions.
so it's funny they didn't show it on the episode. I was being very helpful the entire time. I didn't want anybody to go home because they made a mistake. I wanted
parameters.
I wanted it to be as tight of an operation as possible, which maybe wasn't the smartest thing, but that's how I go into competitions. I want to beat you at your best, not at your worst, because then I feel better about myself. And if you beat me, fair game.
Yeah.
And so the whole time I was coaching him on how to use a propane forge because he didn't know what colors to look for or what to expect or how long it would take. He had never worked with this material before. W1 can overheat and crumble very quickly, which is why they gave it to us. That's one of those things. Yeah. There's certain steels will just fall apart if hit above a certain temperature.
Huh. Does it just crystallize again?
Yeah, the crystal structure just enters way too like rough of a state.
Okay.
That it can't take any shock. And as soon as you do, it's gone.
Interesting.
It doesn't like fall to dust.
No,
not
not like
on the
Minecraft.
anvil, but it literally will open up and fissure.
Ugh.
And so I was coaching him and coaching the guy who'd done stock removal the whole time because Jaden had hosted a hammer in about 2 weeks before I went on Fortune Fire, where he did a W1 integral forging demo. Basically just spent 2 hours making a knife out of inch round W1 in front of all of us and teaching us everything to pay attention to. I was like, that could not have worked out better for me. I know exactly what I need to do right now. And so I helped them out. I let them know exactly what temperatures to look for. Forge and Fire forges get fucking hot.
Yeah, because there's 4 forges going at once.
Yeah. And like my forge doesn't get anywhere near as hot as theirs do. And so I was having to be super careful. Like in my forge, I can leave W1 in there and I would have to leave it in there for like 20 minutes for it to get hot enough. Theirs, you leave it in there for 60 seconds too long and it's gone.
Wow.
So we were all having to be tight on it. There was one part of the process is we didn't know that we would get hand drills at the second stage of the process. But when they did, the drill bits they gave us were only wood drill bits, not metal drill bits. And so even if we wanted to drill holes in our tang, we wouldn't have been able to. So in the first round, we literally had to punch them.
Right.
They gave us a cold punch and chisel set. A cold punch and chisel set is not designed to hit hot metal. So as soon as it hits hot metal, it breaks, it crumbles, it bends. So they gave us one set of 12 punches for all 4 contestants, first come, first serve. So Ron got there first, and he took the 3 best sized ones. Fucking Ron. I got there second, and I was like, well, my homeboys that I'm trying to help out right now, Danny and JD, I don't want to fuck them over. We've been having so much fun for the last hour and a half. So I was very nice, and I grabbed 2 of the shittier chisels and then 1 that could get me the job that I needed.
Right.
And I just used these 2 to get most of the job done and then finish it out with a good one so I could leave them with some materials. I really shouldn't have been as nice on that show, but I love for money, those guys.
Yeah. In all honesty, it's $10,000 is a lot. It's a good chunk of change. But do you want to be known as an asshole? No.
You'd be surprised how many Forge and Fire episodes I've watched where I'm like, that guy's an asshole. And then I go and like actually meet them in real life and they're not.
Right. It might have been a show.
But everybody recognizes you from the personality that was put out there on that show.
Yep.
Like you're being shown to millions of people. You don't want that to be what you're known for.
Yeah.
And speaking of being known for something in front of millions of people, we get to the end of my episode.
Yeah, because you ended up making the
Sword of Mercy,
right?
Which is one of the British Crown jewels. There's only 1 in existence, and it is at
now 2.
Well, 3.
3.
There's only 1 actual one.
Sure.
It's not like a Scottish claymore where there's a bunch of references. It's literally just, you've got to make this one sword. Do
Right.
your best, boys. And I had never made a sword up to this point. Never really was interested in it, especially when you make things by hand for so long. You try to stick to the smaller stuff
Yeah.
because it doesn't take as long and it's a little bit easier. I didn't even like double bevel things that much because just the symmetry was really hard to accomplish.
Looking on both sides, you mean?
Yeah, so like a dagger, how both sides are sharpened.
Oh, okay.
That's a
So
double
looking
bevel.
at it, it'd be like a
diamond.
diamond.
Yeah.
Instead of a triangle.
So this is where I gotta watch my words and what I say.
It came down to fit and finish, right?
No,
Yours? Really?
my sword was not sharp.
Really?
Yeah, I lost fair and square. I actually beat him on fit and finish.
Because you at this point, did you have a press?
I did. I bought it for Forge and Fire and
The same
had
one that you
never
have?
used it before Forge and Fire.
Okay.
My opponent did not have any press. Ron did it all by hand.
What a beast.
Oh yeah. But he didn't make Damascus. He just used monosteel.
Right. And you went for Damascus.
I went for Damascus. I started with a 26 layer billet and then just forge welded it down and didn't restack or anything. And that was my sword.
Was that the first time ever you doing Damascus?
In a press, yes. I had done it by hand a handful of times. I started making Damascus soon after I started, which is a mistake. If you're trying to get into blacksmithing at home, wait to make Damascus. How'd you get it in there?
I don't know. Oh, there we go. Yeah, buddy. I got all your shit down here.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let me get it in focus. Let me not get it super close. Ooh, there you go. People watching this, you can see Sean and I made a Damascus tomahawk. If you have a Damascus tomahawk, I want to see it. Bet it's not as cool as this one.
You only think it's cool because you made it.
Yeah, you helped me a lot, though.
I helped you less than you think I did.
I don't know, dude.
You did a lot of that yourself.
I think you say that to make me feel better.
I mean, it's my job to make people feel better about their creations.
It is an interesting pattern. And it's interesting to hear that it's not old.
What, like the art of Damascus making?
Yeah.
And how fresh it is?
Yeah.
How it was started in the 1900s?
Yeah.
We'll get into that. I'm going to piss so many people off.
Yeah, probably.
Talking about this.
Because you like shattered all my like D&D role playing.
Damascus is this umbrella, and there's multiple forms of Damascus. And pattern welded Damascus is pretty new.
Yeah. But the melting of mild steel together.
The old techniques that people will call true Damascus or Woots or any of that stuff, that's been done for thousands of years. Yeah. I'm not an expert on that stuff, but I know enough about it to kind of hold my ground.
Yeah.
But yeah, I made my sword. At the end of the 4 days, I was exhausted. I had worked like, I think over 100 hours in 1 week. Just doing the entirety of Forge and Fire and all the flights and the challenges and being at home. There are several people in that group chat who are exclusively sword makers. One of them, Sam Hallett, Seven Embers Forge. He's a fantastic friend of mine, exclusively sword maker. He went on Forge and Fire once on episode 100, which is the Japanese katana episode. If you want to see it at home, he has a degree in historical Japanese weapon recreation, I think is the technical term of his degree.
And he got that challenge?
He got out in the first round.
What?
He didn't even make it to the katana.
Dude, is he pissed?
Oh, yeah. Because he would have rocked that final round.
How do you get out?
He wasn't very good at forge welding knives because he was just used to making swords. And he didn't work with Damascus that much, so he failed his forge weld because they gave him one of those stupid fucking canister Damascus challenges.
Yeah. Oh, he's not using whiteout. Oh boy, here we go.
Of the materials that he picked, one of them was not a hardenable material because he just didn't know what he was doing.
God, that sucks.
Yeah, and he's one of the best knife and sword makers I know.
Yeah, it's those little slip ups, man. And I'm not a blacksmith at whatsoever. I made a pretty solid knife there, and then the tomahawk. But it is interesting going like from the logic of I've watched so much Forge. I've watched so many episodes. I've watched them all, and if not, I've watched them multiple times over again, just because it's kind of one of those shows I just put on while I'm cooking.
Yeah.
It's always interesting what mistakes people make in the first round, and even in the subsequent rounds that end up getting them out. And it's like, would they have done that in their normal day, or is it because they're time crunched? And it's like when they don't seal the canister all the way so the whiteout burns, and I'm like, and I know it's happening. I'm
Yep.
like, what are you doing?
And it's so easy to sit here and be like, I've watched Forge and Fire a million times, so I know
Yeah.
exactly what's going wrong. But it's such a different experience actually being there.
Sure.
And actually trying this. Like, I'm sure that this was more difficult than you thought it would have been based off of watching Forge and Fire. And not to say that this is the hardest thing to do in the world, but I think that just goes, it's more of a commentary on spectators of just like, a lot of us have a tendency to think that, oh, I could do that. You're not LeBron. You cannot go and do what any of those guys on a basketball court are doing, what any of those guys on a baseball field are doing. None of that.
Yep.
There's all these people are specialties or specialists in their field for a reason.
Yeah.
And you watch them because they're really good at it. You know, you're not just watching some mediocre Joes.
It's kind of like well, you watching Forge and Fire is probably like me watching what's that police show? It's not Cops anymore. Live PD.
But I know what you're talking
It'd be
about.
like me
you're
watching
just
Live
sitting here
PD, and
like-
I'm like, what are you doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's I can kind of get the spectator
it's
point.
always so different when you're actually thrown in there. And Forge and Fire, everyone that I know that's been on there has said that it is way more luck than skill. There's a guy out there named Walter Sorrells, who is a traditionalist knife maker who's been doing this for so long. And he is who taught a lot of the people in my generation how to make knives. He's one of those YouTube creators. And he goes so in depth about, like, he really teaches you. It's not just a video showing the process, but he is getting into it. And he got out first round of his episode on Forge and Fire. It's just, sometimes you can't prepare for, and some people aren't built for making a knife in 3 hours. Some people just seriously cannot do that.
Well, it's the question of whether or not they've ever tried it.
Yeah.
Right? Because like you can make one of the most gorgeous blades and it's taken you 5 years. That's extreme. But like,
you'd be surprised though.
Right. Like, especially with the handle and fit and finish and everything. I get it. But if you've never made something in a condensed time frame, you're kind of expecting like a marathon runner to win a relay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like
this dude's really good at running, just very long distances, and it's very beautiful what he does.
And so I think a lot of people tend to forget that. And that was one of the bigger experiences that I had coming into the public reception of my episode. I lost, and I knew that there was going to be some backlash of just like, oh, that kid lost. He's clearly not that good. But it turned out a lot worse than I thought it would be. People were rude.
Really?
Just telling me to give up, quit, you know.
How? Like email? Like what the
so YouTube posts the final round of every Forge and Fire episode for free. Little 10-minute video.
Really?
And I made the mistake of going through and reading the comments.
Oh no, dude, you got to post and ghost, baby.
Yep. So
no.
I just sat there for one night reading through every single comment.
Oh, dude, that's not good for your mental health.
And anyone at home
man.
can go check it out. Season 9, episode 2, Sword of Mercy Blackout. Check out that video, and you'll see almost every single comment is just saying, what the fuck is wrong with this kid? How did he fail? I could have done better than that. What the couple things that pissed me off. One, nobody in the comment section congratulated my competitor. Nobody said, congrats to Ron for making a better piece.
Yeah.
Well done, Ron. I'm like, Ron deserves better. Have you seen my episode yet?
No, I've been waiting for it on Netflix. And it's not there, but I do have Disney, so I'll check it out.
Okay, so Ron underperformed in like structural integrity. His sword was about to fall apart during the strength test. It started rattling. It got loose. I was praying that they would swing it one more time and that thing would come apart, but it didn't.
Like, come on.
Mine underperformed severely in sharpness. I was barely cutting.
Doug Marcada?
It was both Doug and Jay.
Okay.
Did I say David Baker earlier?
I think you did.
Doug J.
It's
Nielsen.
that mustache.
It's
man.
David
It's making
Baker.
you think of him.
I think it's David Baker. Who's the third judge? I know his last name is Baker.
Yeah,
What's his first name?
I think it's David.
It's David?
Yeah,
Did I just tell myself that I got it wrong when I didn't?
yeah, I think you did.
I don't remember. I don't watch Fortune Fire.
Oh, dude, every episode.
It was both David and Doug. My kill test was a pig corpse carcass.
Mhm.
Corpse is a weird way to word it. And I dented the spine on the first 2 hits, and then on one of the hits, like kind of cut into the rib cage, cut enough that he was like, "Yeah, it can kill," but it wasn't great. Whereas my competitor almost cleaved it in half immediately. And then our strength test was to chop into a bunch of 4x4s and 2x4s that were built to be like a throne. Mine performed phenomenally. No edge damage.
Because it's not sharp.
Because it wasn't sharp. Yeah. It was built like an axe. And so I did great, but nothing came apart. My competitors performed great in the edge department, but his guard, handle, and pommel almost came off. It started rattling.
Right.
And then in the final sharpness test, it was just cutting some rugs. And my competitor is a far better dancer than I am, so I was bound to lose that one. No, he cut through all 4 rugs perfectly, and I only got 1 of the 4 cuts.
Okay.
And so it was just, and it felt terrible.
Do you have that pit like that?
Oh yeah, I almost cried on television. It was so bad. And I don't think this is spoiling too much, but it's not like all of that is shot in one shot. Like they have to do the set changes and the scene changes and stuff like that. And while that happens, you go back and sit in the trailer, but you're not allowed to talk about what's happening on camera. They pretty much just say, if it's not happening on camera, it's not happening. So don't talk about anything. And you can talk about other things. And so that's where I got to hear a bunch of stories about Ron's time in the war and how he got shot with an AK through his arm while pulling one of his troop members off the battlefield, and just all these stories about JD catfish noodling in Oklahoma. Those are some of my most fond memories of the show, was just talking to the guys
in the trailer.
Yeah. But after the tests, after the sharpness test, it was pure silence, because we both know it's over. There's no coming back from this. Congratulations. But we can't say that. Right. Because we can't talk about what happened. So all I said after sitting there for like 10 minutes, head in hands, was I walked over to Ron and I was like, if I ever come out to Oregon, can you teach me how to sharpen? And he was like, yeah, I got you, buddy. And that was it. And then he won. He took home the $10,000. They drove us back to our hotel, and he came to my room. We watched Fortune Fire on TV for 2 hours and just talked, because now we could. Talked about everything from our experience.
Right on, dude.
And he sat down with me and was like, you can't quit. This can't be the end of this for you. You can't let this bring you down. You were so close.
But then you went on YouTube and read the comments.
And then 4 months later, I went on YouTube and read the comments.
God, Sean.
One of my favorite comments from it is one guy said, like, if this guy's 20, then I am 106.
As far as skill?
As far as age. My whole life, people have always assumed that I look older than I am. Because I had a full beard. I had hair down to my shoulders when I was on there. I've got a deep voice. And so people were like, no shot, this kid's 20.
Yeah. He's lying about his age.
And so I was scrolling through these and just crying. And I saw that one. And I was like, that's kind of funny. And I just kept going.
God, dude. But yeah, the internet's not a safe place, man, for comments. Like even the stuff I post and things like that. Most of the comments are on TikTok. So I definitely don't read that shit. But it's sometimes it'll pop up as a notification. And the first 3 words are enough to make me go, huh. Mm-hmm. And I click it and I'm like, I'm never better off from reading it. No. So I've been really good about just not reading that shit. Post and goes, baby.
Yep.
Joe Rogan style.
And so that night I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to quit. I can't do this. My reputation has been tarnished. No one's ever going to buy a knife from me again. And I felt terrible. The whole, like the day that my episode premiered, I like kept refreshing my Instagram to be like, I wonder if I'm getting any publicity. And that day I got 0 followers. I got nothing. It resulted in zero publicity. And nowadays, I don't give a shit. I'm like, who cares? But the whole time, I was so worried about the numbers. I was so worried about the public image. And by the end of it, it wasn't great. I hadn't left the impression that I'd hoped. And that really frustrated me because I did so well the first 2 rounds.
Right.
Nobody failed a round in my competition. Nobody got sent home because they had a catastrophic failure or they failed to meet parameters. The people that went on in each round were by the tightest of margins. So I really was the best person to go through in those first 2 rounds. But I hit my blind spot. I hit my Sam Hallett trying to make a canister Damascus knife. And I couldn't get past that. And
well, dude, I think the shit you produce these days is phenomenal.
I appreciate it.
And I do want to ask, what was the next knife you made after Forge and Fire? So after you feel bad and everything else like that.
So there's obviously several months between when you stop filming and when the episode gets released.
Right.
And so this won't line up timeline wise, but this was in January. My episode released in April. There's a quote at the end of my episode where they asked, like, well, what are you going to do when you go home? And I said, I'm going to make 100 knives until they're all sharp as shit. And that was the final remarks on that episode, I believe. Besides Ron just being like, I can't believe I won Forge and Fire.
Yeah.
That's the final thing I say before I do my walk of shame.
Oh, down the hallway.
Yeah.
People look awkward during that shot.
It's so awkward because they tell you like certain spots that you have to look at and certain spots you cannot look at. And so you're just like, don't look at it.
Yeah.
Because they don't want you just like staring at the camera the whole time.
Walking straight towards it.
Oh,
Terminator style.
So this was the first knife I made after Forge and Fire.
Big ass knife, dude.
Oh, a huge Bowie knife.
God, dude. It deserves more than 59 likes. That's a nice knife.
I am actually really happy with that knife.
Yeah.
So I started taking knives
like
and
the integrated bevel or the guard.
Yeah, the 2-part.
Yeah,
those are really fun to make.
Oh, God, I hate Instagram. I always try to zoom in. And I'm like, why is it not zooming in? Yeah, it's dope, dude.
Yeah, that is a huge knife.
So you're like, all right, I'm not making another sword. F that, but I'm going to make this knife.
And so there were certain tests that I told myself that I had to accomplish before I would start selling new knives. And pretty famously is the paper towel roll chop.
Yeah.
And that was the first knife I made that could accomplish that.
Right on, dude.
Test. And then I just started getting more and more what's the phrase? I can't think right now.
Is it finesse?
Just getting harder and harder tests.
Oh, okay.
Trying to see if I can shave my arm, which is now a mainstay for every knife that leaves my shop, no matter what the application.
Do you make sure you sanitize it afterwards?
Yeah. No.
I cook with those knives, Sean.
Just really going down the rabbit hole of what is the sharpest that I can make these things, learning about edge geometry, learning about different sharpening techniques, different stropping techniques, and really just honing it in. So by the time that my Forge and Fire episode had come out, I had figured out how to make really sharp knives.
Right.
So that's why that, reading those comments, that wanting to quit lasted for literally 24 hours. And that was it.
You're talking right after the episode.
Right after the episode came out.
Right. Then you got back to making the knives. Then you effed up and then read the comments.
Yeah.
And then you felt like not doing it.
I felt like shit for 24 hours. I was like, I'm going to quit. I'm going to sell all my equipment. I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I woke up the next day and I was like, I'm going to make some shit today. Who cares? I'm better than I was during that episode. I'm better than any of the motherfuckers in that comment section. They can try to come and do that. I challenge you.
I'll be the ref. I'm down.
And I was just like, screw it, dude. Are you familiar with the 80-20 rule of
I've heard of it.
Employment and jobs? 80% of the population couldn't do what you do for work, even if they tried. Of the 20% remaining, half of them can do it and do it. Half of them can do it and don't do it. And that's just kind of a general rule. But that even applies to like McDonald's. And then the higher you get, the more niche your profession is, the more that becomes 90, 95, 98, 99. Blacksmithing is like a 98, 99. This is not something that a lot of people have the skill set to do. You can go and make a knife with someone, but actually being able to have the skills and the mind to go and continue to do it and go and make more stuff and be teachable and be able to learn from your mistakes, it's not something that a lot of people possess.
Yeah.
And I very quickly, the 80-20 rule is very important to me now when people decide to hate from the spectators.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I know
it's a good
that most of you can't do it.
Yeah. It's a very good reference point to have.
Yeah.
Basically be like, all right, it's a good benchmark for yourself to know a lot of it's bullshit.
Yeah. And that made me feel so much better immediately.
Yeah, I could see that. So now you're on, we'll wrap this up momentarily, but now you're on this 1,000,000 layer challenge.
So yeah.
So I do have to say, one, a little confused when this account popped up on my Instagram. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And I heard the voice. I'm like, that's fucking Sean.
Wait, so you were recommended it before
before you posted it on yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I watch a lot of, like, if I showed you my Instagram, the amount of forging stuff, like, people would assume I forge. I'm like, no, it's one of my isms. It just depends on the day. So some days I'll watch a bunch of tactical stuff. The next day I'll watch a bunch of like forge stuff, and like Kaylee puts me in check. She's like, we're not buying a forge. We're not doing it. And every time, dude,
you're so
every
close.
time I'm like, I've got it all listed in the Home Depot checkout. I'm like, look, it only cost $1,500 and we're good to go.
Hell yeah.
Oh, so
you can get those numbers down. My cost of entry was 11.
I know. But this is nice stuff. Like, when I do stuff,
you like to go all out.
I like that. Yeah. That's a problem. She keeps me in check. So I haven't bought it yet. But yeah, I was recommended it, and I watched the first video and I was like, damn, that sounds like Sean. I swear to God, if I'm not one of your first like 20 followers on that page, I'd be amazed.
You were, and I was just like, oh, he checked Meadows Forging's story.
Nope. Just popped up.
Hell
and I was like, oh, that's Sean. And then I listened to the voice. I was like, yeah, that's definitely Sean. And then I saw the video. I'm like, that's his fucking shop. Did he start a new account?
Yep.
And I was like, why did he start a new account? And I was like, oh, the algorithm likes that stuff.
So I can get into a bunch of this stuff. It's funny. Also, you're not the only person who found it through recommendations before knowing that it was me. Because I had a friend out in Baltimore send me a DM on the 1,000,000 Layer account, and he was just like, oh, hey. And I was like, what's up, Gary? And he's like, several of my friends sent me this video because they were just like, ooh, look, blacksmithing.
Yeah.
And then it's just you.
Yeah, I felt cheated. I was like, did he delete his old account and not tell me?
No. So the 1,000,000 Layer Challenge came about on January 18th. I was playing a game with a couple of my friends out in North Dakota. And one of those guys, I've kind of run a lot of my content ideas past him. He's very focused in that direction. And so he's always been fine being like a content manager for me, and just seeing when, that video looks good, you need to change that in the editing. Here's some ideas for you. So he makes a passing comment of, those follower challenges that people are doing, you should do one where you just add a Damascus layer for each follower that you get. And I told him to fuck off.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. I was like, I don't want to do that. And an hour later in that same Discord, I was like, I'm going to do it. So the next day,
because then you thought about how badass that would be.
Oh yeah. So the next day I started filming, or the next day I made the account in the morning, told a bunch of people to go on Meadows Forging to go follow it. And I got like 15 followers on that first day, or it was 17 from Meadows Forging. And I was like, cool, I have 1,100 followers and 17 of them want to see me go do this new project. Thanks, guys.
Active followers.
Yeah. And so I film it on January 19th, post it on January 20th. When I post it, there were stories where I said, this is going to be a new challenge that I run for 1 month. Because February 20th was my birthday. And I was just like, that's a convenient spot to end at. And then he pulled me aside and he's like, 1 month isn't enough. There's some of these guys who've been doing this challenge for a year or so and have not gotten close to 1 million. You're not going to get any followers in your first month. Make it 3. And so I was like, all right.
Good recommendation.
Yeah. I post the first video. it gets no traction. It gets like 400 views and no follower conversions.
That's frustrating.
Second video I post, I get probably like 600 views and I'm up to like 50 followers. Third video I post, I'm up to 120 and I maybe get like 1,000 views on that one. And then a couple days later, I'm at work and my phone is just exploding. For the next 72 hours, my phone was averaging 3 Instagram notifications per second.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I was losing my mind because I get stressed out when this thing starts going. Oh my God. It was so unfun. I went to a Nuggets game that night. I arrived at the venue with like 8,000 followers. So that morning I had 200. I arrived at the Nuggets game at like 8 p.m. with 8,000. I left later that night with almost 20,000.
Oh my God.
And then it just kept going. That third day video has 4.4 million views of just people. And this is where the internet strikes again. The comments were getting really nasty because I was only posting once or like twice a week at that rate. And so they see a video posted 3 days ago where he says that he has 120 followers. And I open his account right now and he has 100,000. He has to be lying. What is wrong with you? Why did you quit the challenge? Why don't you give us what we were promised? And the whole time
are you not entertained?
The whole time I'm sitting here, I'm trying to answer almost every single comment. I'm like, I am working on it. I have a full-time job. I run a business on the side. Please give me a second.
Yeah.
This literally happened out of nowhere.
Telling you, content creation,
it's exhausting.
Like, what do you use for editing?
I use Wondershare, Filmora.
Okay.
It's just this simpler paid subscription, but it does a pretty damn decent job.
Okay. With shorts and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I use Final Cut Pro for the long form stuff. Dude,
it's hard.
And my buddy, I had a buddy tell me, because I have to individually go through and select what camera to select. Yeah. It's kind of boring for the listeners, unless you're into this shit. And he's like, well, there's got to be AI that can recognize the voice difference. And I was like, yeah, have you seen that in Zoom before? It's trash.
It's terrible.
It'll like constantly switch back and forth. So I just go through and do it myself.
Yeah.
So 2 hours of a video, I can normally get edited in about 2 hours because I do the fast forward feature. But
yeah,
it's exhausting. And then you add on top animations, and then you add on top trying to voice over. If you're doing that, the amount of times you have to record yourself.
Again, I've been making content for YouTube and Twitch for years.
Oh, so you're probably good.
I started Twitch shortly after I started blacksmithing.
Okay.
So I've been doing them for about the same time. So I am a little rehearsed, and I've got my processes down. I can make each of those million layer videos in about 10 minutes of editing.
Yeah, but that's editing. Not the actual recording.
The actual
process.
Filming. So the day 4 was the big one where I jumped from 120 followers to 48,000. And that one took me 9 hours to film, 1 hour to edit because it was just so much footage.
I like the video you had. Well,
it was like for day 4, we've got 120 followers, and then it switched to 48, and I'm like, oh.
I've got a lot of work now.
You'd also be surprised how many people commented on that, and they're like, "You're not at 120 followers." I'm like, I can only spell it out so much for these guys.
I took it. Watch the video again. It's good for the algorithm.
But yeah, that thing just exploded so quickly, and while it continued to be in the algorithm, I was trying to post more and more videos, more layer updates, more other videos, just so that Instagram would continue to recommend my content.
Yeah.
And we're at a point now where that has ceased. Instagram is not really showing it too much. I think they just liked that one video, sent it out to a bunch of people.
Instagram.
Yeah, I think this is an Instagram thing. I don't think it has to do with the engagement. I don't think it has to do with, I'm doing something wrong. My viewers are doing something wrong. I think it's just the algorithm came and went.
Yeah, I think there's something interesting that happens after you get, like, because I've had reels that get hundreds of thousands of views, tens of thousands of likes, and then the next one right after that, that's almost like pretty much the same, right? Get 100 views.
Won't perform.
Yeah, and I'm like, did I get shadow banned? Like,
Yeah.
did I piss off the powers that be? Like, what did I do?
So I ran into a bit of a problem because my original idea for Million Layer was, one, I'm maybe going to get a few thousand followers from this.
Sure.
And a few thousand layers of Damascus looks sick. And so I can just like slowly take my time, just adding 20, 30, 40, 50 layers each update.
Yeah.
And that didn't get to happen. I didn't get to actualize what my vision for the project was. And so all of these people are like, it's not turning out how I wanted it to. And I'm like, Million Layer is a catchy name. At no point in my life did I think I was going to get near 100,000 followers, let alone 1 million.
Mm.
Damascus doesn't look like anything above 10,000 layers.
No, it looks like monosteel.
It looks like monosteel.
Unless you look really, really, really close.
And so many people, I've been scared to reveal this, what's going to be 131,000 layers. Because people are going to be like, I don't see 131,000 layers. I see like 12,000 and then just like black. And
do you have good cameras?
I do.
Okay. I was about to say, because these zoom in and have really, really good contrasting.
Yeah. It just disappears. It literally alloys. I have made a new alloy of steel in my 120,000 layer billet.
So it looks like mono.
Yeah. Because it is mono. The layers are atoms thin.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
They're going to be so pissed.
People are going to be so pissed. And I've been so scared. Which is kind of why I cut the project early. Yeah. Because I'm like, I don't need this to continue to go up to 250,000.
It's not going to look any
because then it's going to look like absolutely nothing. So I'm at a point now where I made the 120,000 layers, and then I'm currently making a side billet that will be the additional 10 to 11,000.
That looks good.
That looks good. That looks interesting because I've been adding layers as I go. So there's intrigue, there's interest. Yeah. And then I'm just going to have to be really clear of like, that is 120,000 layers and it doesn't look like it. Sorry.
Yeah. That's what happens with Damascus.
So yeah, I've gotten a lot of people reaching out to my DMs and commenting on videos and just being like, I want you to run this channel this way, or I want to see this content.
Well, to be fair, you asked.
I did. And the consensus is that everybody wants something different. And so what I was just trying to do was find a middle line, find a middle ground that everybody would be happy with. And then somebody responded to my story the other day, and they were just like, I hate that you ask us questions. Just do something, you idiot. And I'm like, I seriously can't win.
Yeah. You'll never please everybody.
No. And I'm like, if you're finding time to get mad at a 23-year-old on the internet for not running a random Instagram account the way that you want it, then I think that says more about you than me.
Yeah.
I think I'm doing all right.
Yeah. Yeah. Just do what you love, man.
Yeah. And so that's why I've started trying to have fun with it. I don't know if you caught the reference from the one Michael Lee video.
No.
It was a couple of videos ago, but there's this famous Instagram account that the first couple of videos that they posted was just the same video of excerpts from a German game show where a guy hits a piece of metal 17 times until it's red hot and wins a prize.
Oh, I did. You got like today we're going to be hitting a piece of metal.
Yeah.
Whack, whack, whack.
And so
I was wondering, I was like,
you had no idea what the hell that was. So there's a famous Instagram account that posted that same video. And they did like a little satirical voiceover of it, of just like, for hitting metal 17 times, you've won this picture of motor car, but here in Russia, property is theft, so you're going to have to be arrested. And he says, fair enough. And then the video ends. And they posted that same video 35 days in a row. And people were just like, yeah, he's doing his thing. And on day 36, it changed. And he has started to make a world with lore. It is this like horror ARG where the guy hitting the metal is stuck in a simulation, being forced to stay there by the game show host. The game show host himself is being forced to stay there by company executives. The guy hitting the metal in the first place is the CEO of the whole company. It's
so trippy. It's like
just
a Truman
came out
show,
of nowhere. And so I love it. I'm obsessed with the account. He posts a new update every few days now, and I'm entranced. So I just made that one for fun. I love the account, wanted to pay a little homage. And
I just thought it was funny. I was like,
so many people were like, yeah, he's just hitting metal. But for the people who understood what it came from, you can scroll through the comments of that video, and so many people are like, McKaylee mentioned, hell yeah, Universe Cross. That's what I've started trying to do. I want to have fun with that account. Because when you have 131,000 people telling you how to run something, you're not going to be able to enjoy it for yourself. You're just going to be sitting here stirring at night, wondering about how to please as many people as possible. And the answer is that it's not possible.
Yeah, I had that experience when I first started this. I was like, man, I don't know. Well, one, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I knew I could talk to people, and I was on a few podcasts before this, but I was like, I've never hosted one. I don't really know what to talk about. And the first episode I did with my buddy Griffin Payne felt more like an interview that I didn't really enjoy, and all this other stuff. And I found myself late at night laying down being like, how can I do better?
Yeah.
Like, I want to do better. And it was just this. Ultimately, now I just enjoy talking to people, and I enjoy this experience. So anytime I have guests on, they're like, well, I don't know really what I'm going to say. I'm like, don't worry about it.
Just have a conversation with someone and forget that there's cameras right there.
Yeah. I'm like, dude, I do this for me. The guests that come on should do it just to chat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe one day I'll be big, but I don't know.
From years of experience in making content, it took me a long time to realize that the best content out there is the content that the creator is making for themselves.
Yeah.
And not trying to fit a niche or please an audience.
Yeah.
You just want to see people have fun and have a good time.
Yep. I did a test run with Jeff Pearson on the second time that he came on my podcast, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like I told him before recording, I was like, hey, I want to argue a lot of points. We'll have some good content in there. We talked about like mental health and stuff like that and businesses. But I was like, otherwise, when I say something crazy, I want you to refute it. Fuck yeah. And it was funny, but when it comes to the long form, people tuning in dropped. Shorts skyrocketed.
Yep.
You know, people like that quick shot of dopamine and absurdity. So, well, right on, man. What's the next step for you?
Honestly,
because we're coming up to the end of Million Layer, right?
Yes. So the Million Layer Challenge, well, kind of. The Million Layer Challenge, in the essence of 1 layer per follower, is coming to an end on the 13th, this coming Wednesday.
Okay.
Once that happens, I will grab however many followers I have on that day, make that billet, make that piece. But that is not the only thing I'll be doing with Million Layer Challenge. I'd be a fool to squander 131,000 followers. And I'm smart enough to understand that a considerable amount of these followers are just here because they were promised something free. Sure. And they're going to leave as soon as that's over. And I'm okay with that. Million Layer Challenge has already multiplied my main account following by 6x, which is really fantastic. Good. Sales have been wonderful, and it was entirely free. Yeah.
Like what do they call it? The cost per click.
Yeah. My fucking, there is a technical term and I can't remember it right now. But it's fantastic. Yeah. But I will be making other projects on the Million Layer account, and using that to slowly feed people over towards
your main one,
a YouTube channel.
Oh shit.
I will be coming full circle from how I started and fulfilling the loop and making my own content.
Life is like a circle.
Yeah. I'm very excited about it. I've wanted to make blacksmithing content for a while, and just never thought that people would want to see what I have to offer. I think one of the most surprising comments that I've gotten from the Million Layer Challenge is just people enjoying hearing my voice and hearing me narrate things.
And you got to start doing like ASMR.
Yeah, apparently.
Hello, I'm Sean Meadows.
Like, I never thought that I had all that fantastic of a voice, but they're just like, yeah, you fucking send it. And so I finally feel confident enough that like people will probably watch it. And so I've got several projects planned for the start of that I've already started filming and making. And yeah, just slowly moving people that way, continue to make badass shit on my main account.
And do you have the YouTube account up?
I have not made it yet. This is the first that it is being spoken.
Well, this won't post for like probably 2-3 weeks.
Okay.
So if you do launch it, let me know.
It will just be under Meadows Forging.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on, dude.
I already have the idea. I just haven't made it yet.
Yeah. YouTube's a good platform.
Yeah.
I really enjoy them. I go on podcasts, or not podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And YouTube has some of the best analytics you'll ever get.
And just algorithmically speaking,
Yeah.
YouTube is so kind to creators.
Yep.
YouTube does so much to help us out, whereas Instagram and TikTok are just looking for the next big thing, and then they're going to throw you in the trash as soon as they're done with you.
Mhm.
YouTube just wants to see everybody succeed because they realize that that's how they make a successful platform, and that's why YouTube's been a thing for 15 years.
And that's why they're the best.
Yeah.
Outside of their censoring stuff.
Yeah. Listen, they've got some issues, but they're definitely doing quite a bit right.
Yeah. Once you realize what you'll be censored for. So. Well, right on, dude. I look forward to it. I look forward to you being on this podcast again at some
Hell
point.
yeah. This was so much fun.
Yeah, dude. And if you have any recommendations for people that want to come on, tell their story. Blacksmithing is an amazing art. I feel I'm so happy that a younger generation is stepping up to take it because I felt like nobody was.
I thought it was a dying art growing up.
Yeah.
I thought it was for textbooks.
Yeah. Were you telling me that blacksmiths were spared during medieval raids and stuff like that?
I did not tell you that. I don't know much about medieval blacksmiths.
Somebody told. We'll wrap this up on a cool historical note. It was one of my guests that was on. Told me this, and it makes sense because it's such a fine art that whenever a village or a town was being raided by another faction, they would spare the blacksmith.
Huh.
Like the blacksmith wouldn't have to worry. His family would be fine.
Because there's no replacing him.
No.
You can't just throw someone in there.
No. It's such a fine art, especially back then.
Oh,
that they were like, whatever you do, don't kill the blacksmith.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so they would specifically send people out to secure the blacksmith's family with the new faction and basically spare them.
I think that's also why blacksmiths, there's some historical notion of blacksmiths really didn't enjoy being blacksmiths for quite a long time because they were the instrument of war.
Yeah, the bringer of death.
Wars didn't happen without blacksmiths until guns came about. So thousands of years of human history came down to guys that knew how to do what I do.
Yeah, and hacking people up with this. Could you imagine?
Oh my goodness.
God, everyone freaks out about an active shooter. Rightfully so, because you can get a lot of people with, one thing, but God.
I'd rather die from a gunshot than that.
My God. This would destroy you.
It's not
especially
funny.
The bludgeoning side. Done.
Solar
Scrambled
plexus
egg.
gone.
Yep. Scrambled eggs. Brain's gone. Well, Sean, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
We'll tag all your shit in this episode at the beginning.
Oh yeah.
And those listening at the end. I appreciate you.
Thanks for making it all the way to the end.
Deuces.